So my hero Harper, she has this terrible infection which at any moment could cause her to explode into flame. And she's looking desperately for help. And she finds an ally in the form of a mysterious figure called the Fireman, who is a jaunty young Englishman who's pretending to be a fireman but is not in fact, and who also has the dragon scale, but instead of being a death sentence, he somehow managed to convert it into a source of power, and has very much befriended his own illness. And so the story is very much about Harper and the Fireman growing into friends, and there are things the Fireman knows that Harper needs to learn, and before the book is done it may turn out that there are also some things that Harper knows that the Fireman needs to learn. I didn't answer that question either. Not really. I certainly didn't say why it's important he's English.
No.
One of the other influences on the book is Mary Poppins, which is it's strange to think about, Mary Poppins, the elements of Mary Poppins having anything to do with a dire end of the world novel about people bursting into flame, but there is this weird, Mary does cast this weird shadow over the book, and in some ways that's because Harper herself looks to Julie Andrews as a sort of aspirational figure, this kind of dream representation, of the best a human being can be. Not only can you face horrifying challenges, but you can also sing your way through trouble, and that you're always ready to break into song to celebrate a special moment like cleaning the kitchen. And so there's that, and then she becomes friends with the Fireman, who is an Englishman, and who she does sort of, maybe not quite consciously, begin to look at as being like Bert the chimney sweep from Mary Poppins, and which is an unnatural and horrible thing to think, but that's who Harper is. I've spent a lot of time in England over the last 10 years, and I was a success in England before I was a success in America. My early stories, I wasn't able to sell any of my early short stories in America. I sold them all to English fantasy magazines. And before I was a part of the American fantasy and horror community, I was accepted as part of the English horror and fantasy community. My very first book was published by an English small press, PS Publishing. It was a book of short stories, 20th Century Ghosts, which was later republished wide. But that was my big breakthrough. And I've spent a few weeks over in England every year for over a decade. And so I suppose at some point it was inevitable that someone would come wandering into one of my stories calling people mate and doing Englishman type things. And in this case it turned out to be the Fireman. I also think that the Fireman is a story about the partial breakdown of American society. In some ways it's not about the breakdown of American society. In some ways it's about the way American society almost embraces apocalypse. But I wanted to talk about how America would respond to an out-of-control crisis. And I thought the most interesting way to do that would be from the point of view of someone who is not American, someone who is an alien in New Hampshire and in the United States. And so along came John Rookwood, the Fireman.